Thank you for being our person.
I will open the Thursday, January 9th council meeting at 7:01. Please stand inside the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Mrs. Conley.
Here.
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mr. Marvel is excused. Mr. Maxon.
Here.
Mrs. Race.
Here.
Mrs. Rudy is excused.
Would you like a motion?
I think there are, do we need to make a motion to excuse them? Okay, yeah, but once we get through roll call. Mrs. Atchison is here. And somebody make a motion to excuse.
Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion to excuse Councilmember Marvel and Councilmember Rudy.
Be my guest. Okay.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. 4-0, 5-0. All right, public comments portion. The council welcomes and encourages the public to speak during the public comment and public hearing portions of the agenda. However, the council policy is to hear the public comment, not to act on the public comment at this time. Concerns brought before the council during the public comment portion of the agenda will be referred to the city manager for action. If after communicating with the city manager, no resolution is reached, the concern will be elevated to the mayor and then eventually to the council for action. Those citizens wishing to speak on agenda and non-agenda items will be allowed a maximum of 4 minutes each to address their concerns. This is the only time during the council meeting that citizens are allowed to address the council. Please state your name and address for the record if you would like. Do we have any public comments?
Speak on behalf of everybody here. Perry Hopkins, 90 West Main Street. Speaking on a resident, business owner, and member of the Chamber of Commerce, I think we've had a great 2024 year. We're looking for a even better 2025. We see a lot of advancements. I first started working in this area in 2005. Cedar Springs has become a totally different community than what it was. But yet we see on the misinformed site on Facebook, ones throwing out, Cedar Springs should be ashamed of itself. The city should be ashamed of itself. No, the ones that should be ashamed of themselves are the ones that are not stepping up to help. The ones that their only contribution to the community is sitting there being a keyboard warrior. I think Cedar Springs should be proud of itself. The city of Cedar Springs should be proud of itself. All the boards should be proud of what's happening. Unless I'm missing something, there's no community feuding going on other than those stirring the pot on Facebook. Since I've been in this community, that's all it's been, is one mudsling or another. And we don't have that going on right now, as you can see, because that's the most of the time that we have an audience is when there's something going on. There's really nothing, in my opinion, bad going on other than those that are misinformed on the informed site. So all of you for doing what you do, and everybody that's made Cedar Springs where it's at now should be proud. Those that are trying to molest the egos of other people by throwing out words like be ashamed. Right now, we have our administration at City Hall, not to pat anybody on the back, but just to simply make a fact. More times than not, they're creating solutions versus problems, where we've had in the past, if it didn't fit with certain people's ego, and I'm not just talking about Mike, I'm talking about in the past in general, you had hurdles and hoops. And right now, we pretty much, if you got a problem, a lot of times you get a solution versus another problem to go on top of the problem you got. So we're in a good spot. Thank you.
Public hearings. We'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anybody online that would like to make a public comment? Go ahead.
Doesn't look like like to make a comment, so.
Was that and no public hearings? Let's do, can I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
Make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, then I think we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
All right. I think we did do a roll call because there's money in there. Mrs. Conley.
Yeah.
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Race
Yes.
and Ms. Atchison votes yes, passes 5-0.
I do too as well.
Sorry. Mr. Maxim. That was a very positive way to do that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thought that was short.
Yeah,
I was like,
that's
oh,
good. I know.
I
I like,
got
I know there aren't that many of us, but it seems like there weren't enough of us. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Action items. We don't have any of those either today. So we're on to our discussion item, Planning Commission membership, and we're going to start with Mrs. Falcon.
Just want to review a little bit of history and bring us up to speed on this topic here, and then I'll turn it back over to you guys. November 12th, 2024, Planning Commission member Hogg informed the city that he sold his house in the city and would be moving out of the city, but he still owns property in the city. I looked at the city ordinance regarding membership of Planning Commission. I even confirmed with the city planner, is there any rules? If he still owns property, you know, what, could he still remain on the Planning Commission? The Michigan Planning Enabling Act, for a city our size allows 2 non-residents to be Planning Commission board members. At the December 3rd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously decided to allow Mr. Hogg to remain on the Planning Commission. No rules prohibit him from continuing to serve. And then the December 12th, 2024 council meeting, it was discussed that possibly the city council changed the rules and non-residents are not allowed to serve on the Planning Commission. Discussion, the December 8th, 2016 city council minutes, there was a copy in your packet. Discussion, it was discussion only and no rules were implemented. If the city would like to consider an ordinance change to not allow non-residents to serve on the Planning Commission, I would be more than happy to work with the city attorney to draft an ordinance to state that.
Okay, so I would like to poll everybody and see how they feel about this and what they feel we should do in this. Yeah, just a minute. You can. I don't know that it's gonna happen. What are we gonna vote on?
Whether we accept the resolution to appoint the members as presented.
Motion. It's a discussion item.
That's fine.
This is what I would like to,
Just figuring the motion was there. Yes, I am making the motion to adopt it as presented, the reinstatement of all listed members that are presented.
so no change in the ordinance. Do we have a support?
I'll support.
Okay. Now we can do discussion. I just wanted to make sure that in our membership on our ordinance, it says that members may upon written charges and after a public hearing be removed by a majority vote of the city council for misfeasance, malfeasance, or nonfeasance in office. I don't believe any of these have been anything has been done for any of these charges. So what, did you want to say anything more, Jerry? Or are you pretty?
I have learned nothing as far as negativities about anybody on the board. I personally, if we're doing something like this based on just a whim, okay, then I would have more of a conflict, and just happens to be, but with having a relative of a board member being on the board. And I'm not saying that person should be removed either. And that's why I'm willing to go with it as it is presented. If anything, I could see where there could be more of a conflict there than a person that owns property in this city who just happens to live outside of it. He still has an interest in this community. That's what I've got to say.
Mr. Maxim?
Yeah, I see no reason to change it, quite frankly, if the law or the rules allow two non-residents to be on the planning commission. I certainly see why someone who actually owns property here and has an investment and an interest here, why they couldn't be on the planning commission at all. So I see no need for any change as far as I can see.
I'll agree with everything they're saying. There's just no reason to make any changes if there's no, he's been a great asset to the planning commission, and he still owns property here. There's really just no reason to change what we have.
Ms. Conley?
I have a serious problem with it. If you don't live here, you should not be making the rules about, and I think Matt's a great guy. This is not about Matt. I like Matt. Matt's a friend. And I think Matt's been a very wonderful asset to Planning Commission. But if you don't live here, you shouldn't be voting to make rules. We just had a serious heavy lift on marijuana ordinances. He's gonna be living on the other side of Rockford. But he could be the split vote on whether or not your next door neighbor is a VRBO. He could be the split vote on whether or not another marijuana license is allowed. Like, that seems problematic to me. And there's several people that own businesses in this community that would like to be on that planning commission that we have told they're not allowed to apply because they don't live here. And we had a person who was on planning commission, who was a perfectly excellent planning commissioner, who moved out of the community, and we told them, you have to resign. So I guess I'm confused about, and yes, the state law says you may have two people, but it's because we're a community under a certain size, and they know that communities that are of that size have difficulty filling that commission. And it's why we implemented pay so that we could get people on the planning commission, and why we took it down from 9 seats to 7, because it used to be 9.
If I may, with your explanation, there's a question that springs to my mind. If two people that are non-residents are allowed on the planning commission, why did these business owners who weren't residents, why were they told that they had to be residents? But they didn't have to be.
That's been our policy. There's a difference between must and shall and must.
Seems like we're starting to parse semantics.
Gonna advocate, we should have a policy that you gotta be a resident.
And if I may, that is where we have a problem. If we're gonna pick and choose, we gotta have a policy. We have to have it in our ordinance that you have to be a resident if that's what we're gonna require in the future. And if we're gonna go by per person or per time, I don't think that's what we should do. You know, because he has property here, but he doesn't live here, he still has an investment. You know, that would be the reason if he was supposed to be a resident, but so really, we have no reason for him not to be on the board right now. Moved or not, because we have nothing in our ordinance saying he has to be a resident. So really, there's no reason for us that we can kick him off.
At which point anybody could say, somebody from Grand Rapids could say, I'd like to be on your planning commission. And if we have an opening,
So we really need to figure out what we definitely want our ordinance to be for a planning commission member.
that.
The point is, it's here, it's now, it's what we've got. And it's up to an appointment today.
Well, he's there.
We can do what we will do, what we should do. It's what we have now. That is what we're acting on.
And I would advocate we need to make a policy. I'm not saying we should remove him tonight, but I think we need to make a policy.
I don't believe that we can remove him even if we do make a policy. He has a year term left. I don't think he would be basically grandfathered in, and I don't think that's what you would say for an ordinance, but.
And that would be fine too, but I don't think that this should be how we do it going forward. I think it sets a really terrible precedent. And I think you do not want people who do not live here making decisions about things like where marijuana businesses can be, making decisions about where alcohol establishments can be, what social zones. I mean, some of you had quite some conflict with how late the social district should be open. And do you really want like people like Dave Ringler? Should he get to make that call on how long his social district should be open when he doesn't live here?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to call the vote. We've all had a chance to
Please.
Okay, here we go. I am. Okay, so the motion I have is motion to make no change in the current ordinance. Is that correct, Mr. Gross? That's what I have.
Okay, let's vote.
Means that you don't want to do it?
No, I wanted to know what the exact motion was.
Okay.
We could make another motion later on if we need to. I just want to ask a couple questions. Are you comfortable in the future revisiting this subject?
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
The point is, we don't have anything that dictates they have to be. No.
Okay, do you have, okay, so then let's call the vote. Mr. Gross.
Yeah.
Mr. Maxim.
Yes.
Mrs. Grace.
Yes.
Mrs. Conley.
No.
Miss Atchison votes yes. I don't even know if I'm a miss or Mrs. right now.
Hey, that's your problem.
Madam Mayor. Yes. Votes yes.
Yes, I vote yes. Okay,
Okay, Madam Mayor, I would like to have a discussion about the planning commission membership and what that policy should look like, which is what was on the agenda.
yep, you're right. So we can, would you like to make a motion?
No, because I would like to have a discussion about what this should look like.
Okay, let's have a discussion. What would you like to say?
I have some concerns that the planning commission was asked to vote on whether or not he should stay. Cause that's not part of what they do. Like, the board doesn't get to decide if somebody there, even, let's say there is a planning commission member who hasn't been there in 6 months. We had this happen previously. I won't say the person's name, but it came to city council to remove this person. And we voted to remove that person, but at the time, planning commission couldn't vote to remove that person, even though they hadn't shown up in 6 months, because that's not a thing they can do. They serve at the pleasure of the mayor. So they shouldn't be deciding if he could or couldn't be there. Like that's not a thing. So I'm a little bit concerned with that.
Right, I think we have. A little bit of questions between ordinances and between bylaws. Planning commission does decide their bylaws. We decide the ordinance and we decide the placement.
Right.
So that
And
was,
specifically, you decide the placement at the vote of the council.
right. But we also did not realize, most of us, that the resident thing was not on there.
Yeah,
So we have, we need to do our due diligence when we're looking into these things to see what
I agree.
things are on
And I
our
agree. I'm saying
ordinances.
Madam Mayor, the manager would like to speak.
Section 4, letter A. There's 2 reasons a planning commission member can be removed with a recommendation from the planning commission. So planning commission can discuss, according to their own bylaws, their membership.
Can't vote.
Well, how do you make a recommendation to city council without a vote?
It's not binding, just like they can vote. They can make a recommendation to us on an ordinance, but we have to pass the ordinance.
So what Ms. Falcon is saying, I believe, is she wasn't asking them to vote on who could be on the board. She was asking them what their recommendation would be to us of how they felt about who should be on the board.
They said they didn't have a problem with Matt staying on. Just a point.
Well, I think we want to make clear that Matt is still going to be on the planning commission if he wishes to be. We are trying to make it clear to him that it had nothing to do with him. I think that this whole planning commission membership, we needed to look into it because we did not even know what it said. Because I myself, being on the planning commission, thought it said resident.
I also would like to see, because we've had in the past, a practice of having a city council member on the planning commission.
That is in the
And we
ordinance.
don't currently have a person.
DDA member could be on there.
And I would like to see part of the struggle, I think, is when we don't have someone there, we have to wait till we talk to someone or watch the video in order to find out what happened. And when their meeting is 2 days before ours, that makes it complicating. Where when like Rose was sitting here and Rose was on the planning commission, or when you were on the planning commission, or when Jerry Hall was on the planning commission, we had a person that could say, so this is what happened to planning commission.
Correct.
And I would like to see that.
Okay. Well, I think, go ahead, Mrs. Falcon.
You just said, Madam Mayor, it's zoning board of appeals member can be on planning commission, not DDA. So
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why you were sitting in that chair.
Don't the Board of Appeals people have
No,
I don't have those rules in front of me. I'm sorry.
Can you imagine if you're coming in to appeal your taxes and the person that you're appealing to doesn't live here?
yeah. Maybe we check
That seems.
the bylaw.
So your taxes is not the zoning board of appeals.
Oh, I'm thinking of the tax board. I'm sorry, I'm thinking the tax board of
Well,
appeals.
Once again.
Well, but still,
Yeah.
zoning board of appeals.
I
So the
think-
person who's saying you can't have your fence, the person who's saying that you can't put your driveway, the person who's saying that you can't do whatever the thing is you want to do. Because it originally, when I first got on the council, the zoning board of appeals was the city council. We weren't a separate entity.
And in some cities,
I think
townships.
that's Something that should be discussed and considered, but I think we should continue on with the agenda as is tonight.
The agenda.
The way it is. We're not solving anything right now. We're tossing it back and forth. We're discussing things. If there was a subcommittee of the board members that sat down and went through this and it was brought back to the board, then that's fine.
Well, we can do it that way. I mean, I'm telling you, these are the concerns that I have. And that I would like to see as part of this, that we have a council member that's like, there's a seat designated for council. And
In fact, we have 2 members missing. Okay, I would like to have a full membership here to discuss it.
to discuss it,
For whatever is brought down, with everybody come in with the idea of what it is. Right now, it's all based on the feelings for one particular person.
no, it's not.
That's what has brought up the issue. Let's get past this. Let's get the board seated. Let them get on with the business that they're working on. And then we sit down together and discuss this as a situation.
Seated.
Okay.
They are seated. We're not removing anyone.
Voted not to.
Right. So on the agenda right now is a discussion about policy. I've said these are the things that I would like to see added in a policy. If other people feel differently, I would love to have that conversation. But people not being here doesn't mean we shouldn't have that. We're not voting on anything.
Do you have anything more, Mr. Maxon?
I wonder, I just know that what we've had through the previous agenda and what was on in this agenda and what has been explained to me. I would like to know more about the ramifications of non-residents' influence over the city. Because it still has to go through all these channels. I can fully understand a discussion and even maybe implementation of where maybe maybe we would want at least property owners, at least they have that investment. I don't know that there may be some situations, like you say, where there's somebody who wants to, but there's so many channels to go through. So I guess what I'm getting to is I highly doubt that there's any nefarious infiltration of outsiders trying to manipulate the laws and the zoning and the planning of what goes on in Cedar Springs. That's not to say that we shouldn't have any concern about that. I'm just not sure that that's happening at the scale where we need to make massive changes and just require only residents to be on the planning commissions. Maybe we say, people that have property here or people that have businesses here or something like that. It's people with ties to the community. But I just don't, I don't know if I perceive as great a threat from people rushing from the outside to be on the planning commission. I mean, from what I've seen from my participation here, we have a hard enough time filling positions as it is. For God's sake, we don't want to make it harder. We don't want to make it more difficult. We don't want to drive people away if they're capable and willing to give their time and their talent. So I think we've got to look at this very carefully. That's my thoughts at this point.
And the ordinance that we do have says that these members should be representative of important segments of the community, such as the economic, governmental, educational, and social development of the city in accordance with major interests that exist within the city, such as recreation, education, public health, government, transportation, industry, and commerce. So, I mean, in trying to find somebody in all those situations would probably be difficult,
One more comment.
Mr. Gross.
Anything the planning commission comes up with, as far as changes in ordinances and everything of that nature, either starts from a request by this board or with the completion of the approval by this board. I haven't seen anything that has come in here yet that was totally out of line. One, I was totally unsuspecting because I didn't know it was coming. And that was the short-term rentals. To me, a rental is a rental. If you're going to put regulations on it, then you regulate what it can be rented for. And that's why I was saying I didn't want a party barn for somebody to come in for a weekend party, tear the place up and get out. Those were the things that I was upset about with that. We had no input into it initially. And it came in and there was nothing there. Okay. We, as a board, because we're all seated here right now, have the final say whether something is enacted or it isn't. To say that the planning commission can control everything with marijuana? Wrong. If they're changing anything in the ordinances other than what we have right now, it ultimately comes back to this board to read and approve of. If it falls on shoulders, it falls on each of ours. If we do not read what is presented and study it well, and we miss something, then shame on us. That's a little longer than I figured in a statement, but that was the best I can put it, okay?
Mrs. Rice, do you have anything else?
No.
Mrs. Conley, anything else?
I stand by. You should live here if you're gonna be on planning commission. You should be a resident. And we can talk about nefarious or not nefarious. It's not your next door neighbor that you're making the rule for. It becomes a whole different, when it becomes the people that you're trying to make money off of. And I'm not saying that's nefarious. I don't think it's nefarious that, businesses want to sell marijuana. I don't think it's nefarious that businesses want to sell cheeseburgers or that they want to sell beer. I don't think that's nefarious. At the same time, if I live next door to it, I don't necessarily want it going on until 3 o'clock in the morning. And this is where you get into the they come and ask, and yes, we could tell them no. We have told them no. We had a pretty intense conversation about how late the social district should go. But if they're all the people who already live there, and it's not just a business owner or someone who owns property who lives 25 miles away, I think it's a concern.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your discussion.
As I said, one thing.
Okay, moving on to communication.
Say things about people wanting to make it right for them. I'm going to use a case in hand. Mr. Hockness was on the board. Never once did I hear him vote for anything that was going to enhance his business whatsoever. And that again comes right back to this board. If they were seated on here, if they were voting solely for what was beneficial to them, then I'd call something wrong, okay? It's the same thing here, so. Okay.
So lives here.
I didn't say that. I said if he was voting for things that were only beneficial to him, so.
Do we have any communications?
I would like to point out one of the communications, letter G, Teams of Skinner Field. The 2024 annual report is in your packet. First time ever we've received an annual report from Skinner Field. Woohoo! They had a busy 2024, a lot of participants at Skinner Field. That's awesome. And they have quite a few projects in the lineup for 2025, fixing up the updating siding on the barn down there, the Spirit Wear building, and the locker room and the concession stand, new paint. Just love this group. They really are taking care of Skinner Field.
Okay. Moving on to department reports. Mrs. Falcon, City Manager.
I just have a couple things. In addition to my report that was in the packet, we had a pre-construction meeting for the White Creek Flats apartment complex this past Tuesday morning. Within the next 4 weeks, you should see even more activity down there because they're going to start the sewer that's going to basically follow unconstructed Cherry Street. They're still waiting for the Eagle permit for the water side. Once they receive that, then you'll see activity along Solon Road extending the water line. So that will be exciting to watch for the next 2 years. Day, January 9th is Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. We posted on our city Facebook. Thank you to those that are protecting the city of Cedar Springs and John as their leader. Thank you. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., we have a contractor walkthrough of the Rowland Building. Anybody that wants to come and look at the building that's interested in putting in a bid, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. And then RFQs are due January 23rd. So really looking forward to them coming in and picking a contractor to work with us for that. So that's all I have.
Do we have DPW on?
Yes, I'm here. So I don't really have a whole lot of anything. We had 2 burials and we plowed twice.
Yay.
That's about it. It's been quiet.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Police Department, Sergeant Paulson.
Have too much. The New Year's Eve ball drop, it sounds like it went well. I had 2 deputies there and there was no enforcement action needed, thankfully. So they said it was a little light attendance wise initially. It was a little cold out, but when it got closer to the ball drop, a fair amount of people showed up, it sounds like. If you want to see the pictures, like Ms. Falcon said, of the 4 deputies that are assigned this year to Cedar Springs, they're on the Facebook page. We have really good working for us this year. So I'm really excited about that. Perry's still here. Thank you, Perry, for everything you do, planning these events. You do a great job.
Fire Department, Deputy Fire Chief, Steve Shipper.
I don't want to bore you with what's already in the packet. We ended the year with 854 calls, about within 24 of where we were last year. So we'll give you an annual wrap up next month. And then exciting news on Christmas Eve, or was it New Year's Eve? New Year's Eve? We brought the Model A to Muskegon. So it is out of our hands, and hopefully a couple months we'll see her back. So good year. Thank you.
Awesome. City Clerk, Mrs. Johnson.
Just a couple things. So December is a busy month for the clerk's office. We do a lot of year-end stuff. So we just get lots of stuff prepped and ready for 2025. So we're going to continue to do that throughout January. And then I did want to take note as a maybe kudos to the deputy clerk. She is starting a bachelor's program at Central Michigan University next week. So congratulations to her. And then I also wanted to let you guys know that I have been admitted to the Saginaw Valley State University Certified Managers Program, and I'm looking forward to that. They do 9 core competencies, and that includes fostering culture, city manager, communicating during a crisis, human resources, political advocacy, effective relationship building and leading change, budgeting and financial management, leadership, and hospitality and customer service. So I'm looking forward to starting that next month. So it starts in February. So
All right, Finance Director, Mrs. Landon.
So tax collection is continuing to go well for 2024. So it'll be busy for the next month and a half, just because we're going to be closing that out and turning any unpaid taxes over to the county. But it seems like our collection rates are pretty good so far. So hopefully we won't have too much to turn over. I will be working on year-end reporting, so issuing W-2s and 1099s. So those will be out in the next week or 2. And then after that, or at the same time, I'm going to be starting budget process, getting the templates put together for department heads to fill out their budgets. And then we'll compile those all together to get them ready for the budget workshop, which that usually falls in March. So I am proposing that we do a similar timing as last year for the budget workshop. So I was hoping we could do March 20th at 6 p.m. So that would be the Thursday following the council meeting. So just want to throw that out there and see if there's any issues with that. We can come up with an alternate if needed, but just that's kind of the first choice. So if anyone has any concerns or conflicts with that, make sure to let us know so we can try to come up with something else. But otherwise, hopefully it will work for everybody and you can all be here.
At 6 o'clock.
Enforcement or building inspection, right?
I'm putting the PCI report in the packet, but since the packet went out January 2nd, we didn't have anything from PCI yet, so you'll get that next month. Did you? Perfect.
Let's start with Mr. Gross.
I think there was some interesting discussions tonight. They were good discussions. And I do believe that it's up to the board here to make good, sound decisions on whatever comes in front of us. I think as a whole, we do. And there have been things in the past, personally, I did not necessarily agree to. But I went along and I've told people before, it's not so much what's best for me, it's what's best for the community. I believe that, and I will stick with that. So that's it.
Mrs. Conley.
Thank you again to Perry. I saw that there was an email about would I come but there was no times to have the bathrooms open.
Well, it sounds like he was like.
Okay, because I was like, I said I would do that, but anyway, thank you for all that you do with that. And you do it with the Spooktacular, you do it with all of the summer concerts and the movies, and just really you have become like, I don't know, the city's cruise director. And I think you don't get enough props for that. So as our police sergeant said, thank you for that. And thank you for making New Year's Eve a thing where people can walk and be safe and our businesses can have people come there. And I just really appreciate that. And thank you to everybody that does the work. And thank you to Matt, who, is stepping up to do this. I appreciate it. And I'll keep saying this. I know that Mr. Gross thinks this is something personal with Matt. It's not. I think Matt's great. I like Matt. He's a friend of mine. I just think that you need to live here. And I'm gonna keep saying that.
Mrs. Race.
I think it was a good meeting. I know that we have more discussion about this coming up, so I really didn't have a lot to just. It's nice to have everyone here for discussions like that, so.
Yep.
But it's 2025. I can't believe it. It's crazy. But it's good to see everyone's face here tonight. And that's all I have.
Mr. Maxim.
I would like to reiterate my thanks to Perry and the Chamber and the DDA for all the events, the Halloween, the lights around Thanksgiving, festival lights, whatever the proper name of it is, the New Year's Eve, and all the institutions and things that have come forward in the recent years, the Kent Theater, the amphitheater, everybody that makes that go. I've heard personal comments lately that, and from my own experience being a lifelong resident, when I was growing up, one of the biggest complaints about Cedar Springs is there's nothing to do here. And now there's stuff to do. And I've actually heard, I've heard from residents that, hey, things are starting to pop in Cedar. There's stuff to do. There's reasons to come downtown. And I'd like to express my my gratitude for everything that everybody does to make that happen. I've also had residents that toured the fire barn on Red Flannel Day. They noticed the remains of the Model A there. They've asked me what's going on with it, and they are ecstatic that it's getting put back together. I thought that, people might question why we're spending that money, but the feedback that I've gotten has been nothing but positive and excited. And I did have, to kind of go along with that about the character of the city and things to do like that. I had one person plead with me not to do away with the noon whistle. They just had to hear the noon whistle. So it seems like a frivolous thing, but again, I think that goes to the character of the town. So
Years ago that was gonna get rid of the noon whistle.
I don't know if there was something going around on Facebook or what, but I was approached and said, don't let them take away the noon whistle. So I think people appreciate that Cedar is a fun place to be.
I think that was in the minutes of the same discussion about the person on planning commission last time. It was in that same minutes. Yeah.
Hey, that was before that. That was 3 city managers ago. Chris Burns, that was one of her first things when she became the city manager. She said, we need to get rid of the noon whistle. And everybody like lost their mind.
Yeah.
You know, the library was right next door and the argument was it was too loud at the library. And
I wanted to put it in there too, that I did hear at my work, which is I'm actually in Grand Rapids. And I had some customers that were actually coming out here to the ball drop. I hear there's one in Cedar Springs, and I'm like, you know, I had a new person tell me that, and I'm like, well, I am from Cedar Springs. I said, yeah, this is the second year. So they heard about it from last year and they came out. You know, people did wait a little bit longer to come out, and I had friends that I was supposed to meet, but I got ill, so I couldn't go, but they still went. So, and they had a great time. They sent me pictures and everything. So thanks, Perry.
Let's think about that event.
Mhm.
Some of the ones that never been to downtown, but the rest.
Right,
Yeah.
correct, which is awesome. Yeah. Hmm. Right. Yes, the community. It's great. The community is working on these things. They're getting them going. But the big cheerleader and the big person that really brings all these honors is you, Perry. And we appreciate it.
I really, Madam Mayor, if I can just piggyback, I really appreciate that you're doing it. It makes for a safe space where people don't have to be on the road or not on the road very far, because it can be for the people here in the community and you can literally walk. Because New Year's Eve is a time when a lot of people, I don't have to tell you, which is why we started this Brutacular, was because that's when kids get hit by cars. And if we close off Main Street to go get your candy, you're not going to get hit by a car.
That we know that with our social district, that things are still going well.
Right.
We didn't have anything.
Celebratory drink and they can watch the ball drop, but they don't have to get in a car and drive. And that's sort of a big deal. And so I really appreciate that you're making that. And then it's also good for the businesses to be able to provide that.
The social district versus the beer tent, when you sit down, you drink, you
Right.
drink more than when you're having one walk.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
You stay at the beer tent. So yeah, great. So once again, the staff is awesome. And thank you, everybody. I think everything's going great. Thank you, Mrs. Falcon, for doing all the things that you do. Mrs. Landon, keeping us running, keeping us paying the bills. Rebecca, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Fire. Please. Thanks. And with that, we are adjourned.
Go team.